Hello scholars, welcome to Dakshinai classroom. In the last lecture we had talked about that whenever there is a spontaneous nuclear decay, some amount of energy is released and that energy is very high when compared to chemical reaction. So in today's lecture we are going to take a look at how we can use that energy which is released during a nuclear decay or a nuclear reaction. So let us first take a look at the topics which we are going to cover in today's lecture. So the first topic which we will talk about is nuclear reaction. And the second topic which we are going to talk about after nuclear reaction is that there are two kinds of nuclear reaction. So second topic will be nuclear fission. And third topic which we will talk about is how we can use nuclear fission in our benefit. So third topic which we will talk about is nuclear reactor. Nuclear reactors are basically the setups which are used to control nuclear fission and use that energy to generate electricity. So that we will talk about in third, nuclear reactor. After that we will talk about the second kind of nuclear reaction, that is nuclear fusion. So that will be nuclear fusion. So nuclear fusion and nuclear fission, they are two kinds of nuclear reaction. And in nuclear reactor we use the energy generated through nuclear fission to generate electricity. So these are the four topics which we are going to cover in today's lecture. So first let us talk about what is nuclear energy. So if you take a look at the diagram here, which we have already discussed in the previous lecture, that is binding energy per nucleon with respect to your mass number. Now when you take a look at here, we talked about in the previous lecture that for mass number less than 170 and greater than 30, binding energy per nucleon remains almost same. Almost same. And for mass number less than 30, for mass number less than 30, binding energy per nucleon is less. And for mass number greater than 170, binding energy per nucleon is more. Now what happens is, for example, let's say I have a uranium 235 nucleus. Now uranium 235 mass number is 235. So that lies in this region. Its mass number is greater than 170. So what will happen is a uranium nucleus can break into two daughter nuclei. And when it breaks into two daughter nuclei, what will happen? The daughter nuclei will have mass number less than uranium or less than 170. So obviously daughter nuclei will have binding energy per nucleon more than uranium, and in that process energy will be released. In the same way, if you take a look at the region for which mass number is less than 30, so what will happen? Two nuclei for mass number less than 30, they can combine to form a new nucleus with mass number more than previous. So in that case what will happen? Two mass number less than 30 nuclei will combine to form another nucleus, and in this case binding energy per nucleon of final product nucleus will be more than binding energy per nucleon of initial components. So what is happening here? What is happening is, for this region, two nuclei can combine to form a new nucleus so that binding energy per nucleon increases. And what can happen in this region? One big nucleus can break apart into two daughter nuclei such that binding energy per nucleon increases. So in this process, some amount of energy will be released, and that energy is your nuclear energy. So remember, there are two kinds of process in which nuclear energy can be generated. Either you break a very heavy nucleus in this region, you break that nucleus to produce two lighter nuclei. That way binding energy per nucleon will increase and energy will be released. So that process will be your nuclear fission. We will talk about that in detail in a while. And in this area where mass number is less than 30, in this area your two nuclei can combine to form a heavier nucleus. In that way also binding energy per nucleon increases. You can check both of those processes in the graph here. So both of those processes fall under nuclear reactions, and energy released during those processes is called your nuclear energy. Now what happens in a nuclear fission is, as we have already discussed, that when a heavier nucleus breaks apart into two smaller or lighter nuclei, its binding energy per nucleon increases, and since the energy is released. So what is your nuclear fission? Nuclear fission is nothing but, what you can write? You can write breaking of a heavier nucleus into two lighter daughter nuclei. That is your nuclear fission. Now in natural process, whenever in naturally a heavier nucleus wants to gain more stability, it does not break apart. What it does is, it either emits an alpha particle or beta decay or gamma decay or beta minus plus decay that way. So energy released during those processes is very small. So nuclear fission does not occur naturally. We have to artificially induce nuclear fission. Now how we can do that? We can do it by making a nucleus more unstable. How do we do that? Let us take an example. So let us take an example of uranium 235, atomic number 92, mass number 235. And when we bombard this uranium 235 with neutrons, so what will happen? Let us add a neutron, mass number 1, atomic number 0. Now, so what will happen is, when you bombard this uranium 235 with neutrons, this will convert into uranium 236. Mass number will remain same, atomic number will increase. Now this uranium 236 is highly unstable. Now this uranium 236 will break into two parts. What are those parts? One will be barium, atomic number 56, mass number 140, plus another will be krypton, atomic number 36, your mass number 89. Now this way, plus here, there will be 3 neutrons emitted, 3 number of neutrons. Now what is happening here? I bombarded a uranium 235 with neutrons, which produced uranium 236. This uranium 236 is highly unstable. So what will happen? It will break into two parts. One is barium 56 140, another is krypton 3689. Plus 3 individual neutrons are emitted. Now how we can calculate how much energy will be released during this process? So binding energy per nucleon for uranium 235 is how much? 7.591. That is binding energy per nucleon for uranium 235. Now binding energy per nucleon for barium is how much? 8.3934. Binding energy per nucleon for barium. And binding energy per nucleon for krypton is 8.7173. Now see, I want to calculate how much energy will be released during this process. So what I can do is, I want Q value, energy released during the process. Now there are two ways to calculate Q value. One way is to calculate mass defect. What is mass defect? We have already discussed in the previous lecture that difference in the mass of original constituent particles and the final daughter nuclei. So here we have not been given mass, then how we can calculate? See, if I find total binding energy of this plus total binding energy of this, and I subtract this from total binding energy of this, what is binding energy? Binding energy is the energy released when that product is formed. So total energy released here minus total energy released here, that should be energy released in the process. So if you find total energy released here, so Q1 will be how much? 235 multiplied by 7.591. And when you solve this, you will get approximately 1783.8 mega electron volts. That much is your binding energy, total binding energy for uranium 235. Now what should be total binding energy here? So when you find binding energy here, you will get how much? 140 into 8.3934 plus 89 into 8.7173. Now when you solve this, you will get approximately 1984.85, approximately like this. Now see here, what is happening? Total energy released during the formation of these nuclei is this much, and total energy released during the formation of this is this much. Then obviously there is more energy released in the formation of this, meaning these much energy is released, this much energy released here. Now if I want to know how much energy is released during the breaking of uranium 235 nuclei, what I need to do? I will just subtract this value from which? From this value. So delta Q you can write how much? Q2 minus Q1, which you will get approximately how much? Approximately 200 mega electron volts. So when you break one nucleus of uranium 235 here, you break one nucleus of uranium 235 like this, and you get barium and krypton, then how much energy is released? By breaking one nucleus, you gain 200 mega electron volts of energy. That is a very large amount of energy. So here you can see a diagram how this break happens. I bombard one neutron or uranium 235, that gives us uranium 236, which is highly unstable. So that unstable nucleus breaks into two daughter nuclei plus 3 neutrons. So this energy which is released, now this energy can be used to generate electricity. So first let us solve a question based on this. Now here it is given that find total energy released in the following process. Now what we are trying to do is, we are trying to understand if a nucleus breaks into two daughter nuclei, then how we can find the energy released. Now one way is to find the mass defect and then multiply mass defect with C square. That is one way. Another way is, if you are given like this, here what is this? One neutron combined with uranium-235 92, and it can break into multiple ways. Previously, in the previous equation, we have seen that it breaks into barium and your krypton, but it can break multiple ways. So here it is breaking into xenon 140 and strontium 94. Now how you can find the total energy released is that you find the total binding energy of the parent nucleus and you find the total binding energy of both daughter nuclei and you minus as we did before. So here what I can do is, energy released will be, let us say this is total binding energy will be EB initial and this will be EB final. So what I will do, final total binding energy minus initial total binding energy. So what we'll do, here this is binding energy per nucleon, and how many nucleons are there? 140. So 140 multiplied by 8.4276 plus, what is binding energy per nucleon here? 8.7326. How many nucleons are there? 94. So 94 multiplied by 8.7326. So this is your total binding energy of both daughter nuclei combined. If I want to know how much energy is released during the process, I will, here this binding energy I will subtract from this. So final minus initial total binding energy. What is initial total binding energy? 235 is the number of nucleons here, multiplied by here 7.591 binding energy per nucleon, 7.591. Some of you may wonder that, sir, what about neutron? Neutron is a free, it doesn't have any binding energy. So there is no binding energy for this neutron or there is no binding energy for this neutron. So like this. And when you solve this, you will get approximately 250 mega electron volt. So when a uranium-235 breaks into xenon and strontium like this, then how much energy is released? Around 250 mega electron volt energy is released. So this way we can calculate how much energy will be released in a fission process. What is a fission process? When a heavier nucleus breaks apart into two lighter nuclei, that is what you call a nuclear fission. As we saw just now, that when a nuclear fission takes place, a lot of energy is released. That energy is of the order of mega electron volts. Now that is a lot of energy. Now that energy appears in what form? If you remember, there are daughter nuclei present and there are some neutrons present. So that energy which is released during the process, that energy appears as the kinetic energy of daughter nuclei and the extra neutrons which are released. So what happens is that this kinetic energy which is with the daughter nuclei and extra neutrons, this kinetic energy can be converted into heat energy, and we can utilize that heat to boil water and then use that boiling water or steam to generate electricity. So that way we can use nuclear energy to generate electricity. Now let us take a look at the process of generation of electricity through the nuclear fission in a little bit more detail. Now what is the first step? First thing happens is a uranium-235, let's say, it breaks into two parts. So what will happen? Let us say a neutron plus uranium-235 92. Now what will happen? This can break into barium 56 140 plus strontium 36 89 plus 3 neutrons 0 1. We have just seen this equation before. Now how much energy will be released? Delta Q approximately 200 mega electron volt energy will be released. Now when this energy is released, most of this energy goes to neutrons and these two daughter nuclei. Now see, we were using one neutron. What we did is we bombarded one neutron. This uranium break apart into this 2 and 3 neutrons. And as you can see in the diagram here, what will happen? These three neutrons which are released due to first reaction, these 3 neutrons can further go and initiate 3 more nuclear fissions. Meaning, initially what I did, I used one neutron to break apart one uranium-235, and due to this fission 3 more neutrons are released. Now these 3 neutrons can further break 3 more nuclear this uranium-235, and because of those 3 more will be released. So what will happen? Here I took one reaction. That reaction will lead to 3 more reaction. These 3 will lead to 3 more, 9 more. So 1, 3, 9 and again 3. So that way your reaction is increasing. 1 will lead to 3, 3 will lead to 9 and so on, it will keep on increasing. So that way I need to just initiate a reaction. After I have initiated a reaction, the extra neutrons which are produced in the first reaction, they can go on and initiate their own reaction. So that way a chain is established. If you can see here, this is like a chain, 1 to 3, 3 to 9 and so on. So a chain is established, that is what you call a chain reaction. I just pushed one fission reaction. After one fission, it can automatically go on increasing the rate of fission. So that way a chain of fission reaction is established. I need not break each and every time a fission reaction. I need not break each and every time a nuclear uranium-235 nucleus. Now we have seen that once we initiate a nuclear fission, it can go on increasing the number of nuclear fissions will take. So if I assume that in one nuclear fission 3 number of neutrons are produced, so what will happen? I initiated one neutron, so one fission. One neutron will lead to 3 neutrons. These 3 neutrons will further create 3 fissions. 3 will lead to 9. 9 will lead to 27. 27 will lead to 81. Like that, number of nuclear fissions is increasing. So this is what you call a chain reaction. From 1 to 3, 3 to 9, 9 to 27, 27 to 81, 81 to 243 and so on. Now here is the problem. This fission reaction is uncontrolled. What do you mean by uncontrolled? That once you initiate the reaction, you have no control over the reaction. The neutrons which are produced in one reaction automatically initiate further nuclear fission. So what is the problem here? The problem here is, if neutrons keep on producing further reaction without any check, then what will happen? In a very short period of time, this number will be so high that energy which is released, that will be so large that there will be an explosion of energy. There will be explosive amount of energy released. But we do not want that, because if there is an explosive amount of energy released, we cannot use that, right? We cannot use that to generate electricity. So if we want to generate electricity using the fission reaction, then we need to control this reaction. We need to control this chain reaction so that energy which is released does not become so large that there is an explosion. Energy should be moderated so that we can handle that much amount of energy. Now what is the problem in the nuclear chain reaction? Chain reaction problem is that here if you write the equation 1 neutron plus uranium 235 92, which changes into your krypton, yes, krypton 3689 plus your barium 56 140 plus 3 neutrons. These 3 neutrons are very important. So what is happening here is that I created one reaction and these 3 neutrons will further go on to make 3 more reactions, and out of those 3, 9 neutrons will be created, and those 9 neutrons will initiate 9 more fission reaction, and after that 9, 27 more fission reaction, then 81 and so on. So what is the problem here is that I am using 1 neutron, and after using 1 neutron 3 neutrons are produced. So that is the problem. These 3 can further create reactions. Now what is the solution here? If I do not want our reaction to increase exponentially from 1 to 3, 3 to 9, 9 to 27, 27 to 81, if I do not want that, then the easiest way, what is the easiest way? Easiest way is that somehow if I can prevent 2 of these 3 neutrons from creating further reaction or initiating further reaction, then my problem is solved. 1 neutron I used, 1 fission reaction will take place, 1 neutron will be left, and that 1 neutron will create further fission reaction, and further fission reaction will be taking place. It will not increase exponentially from 1 to 3, 3 to 27, 27 to 81, that will not happen. So how we can prevent these extra neutrons? How many neutrons are here extra? 2 neutrons are extra. Then how we can prevent those extra neutrons from creating more fission reaction? So what it is called? It is called your control rods. What are control rods? We will take a look at when we take a look at the complete nuclear diagram. Now first let us take the K value. Let us take a look at the K value. What is your K value? So your K value is, sometimes it is also called multiplication factor. Now what is multiplication factor? Now multiplication factor is, if you take a look at here, that this fission reaction I was using 1 neutron, and because of this fission reaction 3 neutrons are produced, and these 3 neutrons can further initiate 3 more fission reaction. So what is multiplication factor? Multiplication factor here is that because of the neutrons released in the previous reaction, I can further initiate 3 more chain reactions. So what will be the multiplication factor here? Multiplication factor will be 3, meaning from 1 to 3 to 9 to 27 to 81 to 243 and so on. So what is the multiplication factor? That you can simply say that how many further nuclear fissions can be initiated using neutrons produced in the previous reaction. So what is happening here? This is the previous reaction. So here 3 neutrons are produced. Neutrons produced in the previous reaction. And using these 3 neutrons, I can further initiate 3 more fission reactions. So here what will be the multiplication factor? Here in this case, for this case you can say multiplication factor is 3. So one fission reaction will lead to 3 more fission reactions, and that way exponentially it is increasing. Now in order to sustain a nuclear fission, now see what will happen. So if my K factor, K is the multiplication factor. So if K is greater than 1, if K becomes greater than 1, let us say 2, then what will happen? One reaction leads to 2 reaction, 2 reaction leads to 4 reaction, 4 leads to 8, 8 leads to 16, 16 leads to 32, and so on, 64, 128 and so on. So number of reaction taking place is increasing exponentially, and so will be the amount of energy released. And if that happens, the energy released will be so high, it will be uncontrolled. There will be an explosive amount of energy released. So this we do not want. So what will I can say, if K equals 1, then you can say rate of reaction will increase exponentially. So number of fission reactions will increase exponentially, and if number of fission reactions increases exponentially, there will be an explosive amount of energy released. We do not want that. So we do not want our K to be very large than 1. We do not want that. And if K is less than 1, then what will happen? Let us say K is 0.5. So initially I generated, let us say 16 nuclear fission. So out of those 16, 8 will take place. Out of those 8, 4 will take place. Out of those 4, 2 will take place. Out of those 2, 1 will take place, meaning the number of further chain reactions will decrease. And if the number of further chain reaction is decreasing, then what will happen? Eventually your fission reaction will stop. So what you can say, if K is less than 1, eventually fission reaction will stop taking place. We do not want this as well. So we neither want our K to be very higher than 1. If K is higher than 1, then it will be an uncontrolled chain reaction and there will be explosive amount of energy. We do not want that. If K is less than 1, eventually reaction will stop taking place. Our reactor will shut down. We do not want this also. So what do we want? So we want our K to be approximately equal to 1. So if the K is approximately equal to 1, then once we initiate the reaction, one reaction will lead to only one reaction, and that way it will be a uniform amount of energy output. Energy will neither increase very rapidly nor decrease very rapidly. Energy output will be uniform. So that way I can control our reaction. So for K almost equal to 1, it will be a controlled chain reaction. that way. Now how do we make sure that K is almost equal to 1? So to maintain K almost equal to 1, what we need to do? Here 3 neutrons are released due to first reaction. So what we can do is, we can somehow prevent 2 out of these 3 neutrons to further create chain reactions. How do we prevent a neutron to create further chain reaction? Now, one way to prevent is to use control rods. What are the control rods? Control rods are rods usually made up of cadmium. Now, due to these cadmium rods, what happens that these cadmium rods absorb extra neutrons. So, what you can do? Control rods usually made of cadmium are used to absorb extra neutrons produced in fission. So when control rods are used to absorb extra neutrons, meaning here I will use control rods made up of cadmium to absorb 2 out of these 3 neutrons. So I will not allow all the 3 neutrons to create further chain reaction. I will absorb 2 of them and I will allow 1 of them to further create chain reaction. That way I can control that my reaction does not increases exponentially. I can control the output of my nuclear reaction. So if I ask you, tell me the K factor in this equation. So I was using 1 neutron to break apart uranium-235 into xenon and strontium, plus 2 extra neutrons are emitted. Now these 2 extra neutrons can further create 2 more chain reactions. So here you can say, sir, K factor is nothing but 2. What is K factor? Multiplication factor. Now this is a very basic idea. Now we will see how K factor is not exactly equal to how many neutrons are emitted. Now let us discuss one more very important aspect of our nuclear reactor. Now what is that? To illustrate that, let us take a look at this example. Here I am using 1 neutron to break apart uranium-235 into 2 daughter nuclei, plus 3 extra neutrons are emitted. Now there is a lot of energy released, and this energy appears in the form of kinetic energy of neutrons plus these 2 daughter nuclei. So after a fission reaction, the neutron which is emitted or released has a very high energy. So what you can write, first point is, neutrons emitted or released have very high energy. These are very high energy neutrons. Now what is the problem with that? There should not be any problem with that. So the problem is that experimentally it is observed that if your neutron has a very high energy, then that high energy neutron cannot initiate a nuclear fission. Meaning here, if with uranium-235 I use a very high energy neutron, this reaction will not take place. This high energy is approximately 2 mega electron volt, like that. So if I use a very high energy neutron, then this reaction will not take place. So second point what you can write is a high energy neutron, a high energy neutron cannot initiate a fission reaction. So a high energy neutron cannot initiate a fission reaction. And if this high energy neutron cannot initiate a fission reaction, then how can further reaction will take place? Then what I need to do? I need to decrease the energy of these three neutrons. Somehow I need to decrease the energy. Now how do I decrease the energy? See, you have studied that if two particles collide, then some amount of their energy is lost or transferred from one particle to another. So energy of these high energy neutrons can be decreased by making them collide with a light particle. So what you can say, energy of these high energy neutrons can be decreased by colliding them with similar compounds. Now what will happen? When these high energy neutrons collide with these compounds, what will happen? They will transfer some of their energy to those compounds. For example, let us say I take water molecule. So if I make that neutron collide with water molecule, then what will happen? My water molecule will take some of the energy of these high energy neutrons. So these high energy neutrons, their energy will be decreased. They will become a slow neutron, a little bit slow. So you will say this way, slow neutrons. Slow neutrons are sometimes also written as thermal neutrons. Are created. And these thermal neutrons, which are slow neutrons, they do not have very high energy, they have low energy. These slow neutrons are ones which initiate this fission reaction. Meaning, to initiate nuclear fission, we need slow neutrons. We do not want fast neutrons. So when fission reaction takes place, the neutrons which are generated are very high energy. We need to decrease their energy. So what we did is, we make them collide with some compounds like water or heavy water. So they transferred some of their energy to those compounds, and by transferring their energy, their own energy comes down. So they become slow neutrons or thermal neutrons. Now these thermal neutrons can further create your chain reaction. So now let us take a look at the complete picture of our nuclear reactor. So as you can see in the diagram here, there are different parts of a nuclear reactor. Let us list out what are those parts and what are their uses. So first, there is a core. Now what is core? The core is the place where your fission reaction takes place. Fission reaction means breaking of a heavier nucleus into two lighter nucleus. So core is where fission takes place. Now, second most important thing is, you can see here something called moderator. Now, what is moderator? We have just seen that a high energy neutron cannot initiate nuclear fission. So in order for them to make nuclear fission, I need to decrease their energy. Now, how I can decrease their energy? We can make them collide with another particle or compound so that they can transfer some of their energy to those compounds and hence decrease their own energy. So that way we use some compounds. What are those compounds? Sometimes we use carbon, graphite. Sometimes we use heavy water. What is heavy water? Deuterium-220. Meaning in place of hydrogen we are using deuterium. What is deuterium? Another isotope of hydrogen which has one proton and one neutron in this nucleus. So what is the moderator? Moderator is the compound used to decrease energy of neutrons. So moderator is nothing but like water, heavy water, carbon, and it is used to decrease the energy of high energy neutrons. Why we are decreasing energy? Because high energy neutrons cannot further initiate nuclear chain reaction. So that is your moderator. After that there are control rods. What are control rods? Control rods will absorb. For example, 3 neutrons are created. So control rods will absorb extra neutrons. Why we are doing that? To maintain K value. K value is the multiple factor. So we can maintain K multiplication factor at around 1. So that my energy does not increase exponentially. If it increases exponentially, my reaction will be very explosive. We do not want that. So control rods are used to absorb extra neutrons. Now, so if you look at the diagram here, what is happening? In the core, reaction takes place, and due to that reaction a lot of energy is released. Now we use that energy to boil water, and when you use that energy to boil water, water gets converted into steam, and we can further use that steam to rotate our turbine, and by rotating the turbine we can generate electricity. So what is the basic fundamental formula of generating electricity through the nuclear reactor? We use nuclear fission to generate energy, heat energy. Using that heat energy we can boil water, and when we boil water we convert that boiling water into high pressure steam, and using that high pressure steam we can rotate the turbine, and when you rotate the turbine electricity is generated. So that is the basic way in which your nuclear reactor works. You use the energy of fission to generate electricity. Now there are different parts. One part is coolant. What is coolant? Coolant is that very high amount of energy is released. So you need to maintain the temperature of your nuclear core, right? If you do not maintain the temperature will slowly increase, and ultimately your reactor will melt down. So you do not want your reactor to melt down. So coolant is used. You can write that here. There is something called coolant. Coolant is used to maintain the temperature of nuclear core. So if you do not use the coolant, then your temperature will keep on increasing and ultimately your core will melt off. Now there is also your something called shielding. Why the shielding is used? For example, when nuclear reaction takes place, a lot of high energy particles are generated, like alpha particle, beta particle, high energy neutrons and so on. Now these particles are very harmful for the living things, for us, for plants, for animals. These particles are very harmful. So what we do is we use a bioshield or protective shielding. Now what is the use of protective shielding? The protective shielding stops these high energy particles to escape into the surrounding. And if they escape into the surrounding, they will harm us. So protective shielding stops them from escaping into the surrounding and harming the living things in surrounding your nuclear reactor. So if there is no protective shield, then there will be nobody around the nuclear reactor. Nothing will be able to live around that, because those particles will destroy every living organism. So that is why, to prevent them, we use protective shielding. So this is the way we can use your nuclear reactor to generate electricity. Now that we have seen how a nuclear reactor works, let us take a look at what is your nuclear fusion. Now as we have seen in your binding energy per nucleon versus mass number graph, that below 30 mass number, if the mass number is below 30, then two nuclei can combine to form a heavier nuclei. In that way they increase their binding energy per nucleon, and during the process they release some of the energy. So let us take an example. Let us say one hydrogen, one H1 plus one H1. So two hydrogen nuclei combine to form a deuterium nuclei, plus a positron is released, plus a neutrino is released. And in this process, approximately 0.42 mega electron volt of energy is released. Now it looks very simple, that okay, two lighter nuclei will combine to form a heavier nuclei. Then what is the problem here? Why we do not use nuclear fusion in case of our reactors? Why we are working with fission? Now there is one very crucial problem. What is that problem? These hydrogen nucleus. Now one hydrogen nucleus is nothing but a proton. Now see, here is the problem. If I put a proton here, positive charge, and if I put another proton here, positive charge. Now remember, in order to form this deuterium, they will have to come very close to each other, of the order of Fermi meter. Now here they are, let us say, at 1 meter difference. Now can they come close to each other? No. Why not? Because they both are positively charged. And when you know from electrostatics chapter that two positively charged particles repel each other. So if they are repelling each other, then they cannot come close to each other on their own. So if I want to make them come close to each other, then what I will have to do? I will have to apply some energy. I will have to give them some kinetic energy towards each other so that they can come close to each other. Now, higher the energy I give, the closer they will come close to each other. Now, in order to make a nucleus out of them, for example, let us say I gave them some amount of energy and they come from here to here. After that, energy gone. Kinetic energy gets converted into potential energy. So, if I want to make a deuterium nucleus out of two hydrogen nuclei, then I have to provide a certain minimum amount of energy so that they can come close to each other, so close that they can form a nucleus, so that nuclear force starts working. Remember, what was the force which was keeping the nucleus together? It was the nuclear force which was keeping all the nucleons together even if there was electrostatic repulsion. So, we have to make them come so close to each other that nuclear force starts working. And once nuclear force starts working, it can override the electrostatic repulsion and they can form a new nucleus. So, in order to make them come close to each other and form a new nucleus, a minimum amount of energy is required. So, what you can write? You can write is positive charge on nuclei prevents them from coming close to each other and forming a new nucleus. So, in order to make them come close to each other, sufficient amount of kinetic energy must be provided. So, second point, sufficient kinetic energy. Now, what is this sufficient kinetic energy? Kinetic energy should be so much that they come so close that nuclear force starts working. And once nuclear force starts working, it can overcome electrostatic repulsion and help them form a new nucleus. So sufficient kinetic energy must be provided. Now, what is the way through which I can provide this sufficient kinetic energy? Now, you must have seen in your kinetic theory of gases chapter that as you raise the temperature of a gas, the kinetic energy of gas molecules also increases. So, if I have hydrogen gas and I want to increase the kinetic energy of the hydrogen gas, so one way I can do that is I can increase the temperature of the gas, and as I raise the temperature of the gas, the kinetic energy of gas molecules will increase. So, how you can provide this sufficient kinetic energy? So, this kinetic energy can be provided by raising temperature of gas. So, if you have hydrogen gas and you raise the temperature of the gas, then all of the gas molecule will have high kinetic energy. And as they have high kinetic energy, they may come so close that nuclear force starts working. And once nuclear force starts working, that one new nucleus can be formed. So last topic, last point, that what I am doing here, in order to achieve fusion, I am using temperature. Why I had to use temperature? Because on their own they cannot come close to each other. Why they cannot come close to each other on their own? Because positive charge, they both have positive charge, and since both nuclei have positive charge, they will repel each other. So in order to overcome that repulsion, I had to provide kinetic energy. And how I am providing kinetic energy? I am raising the temperature. So what I am doing? I am raising the temperature of the gas sample in order to achieve nuclear fusion. So when fusion is achieved by raising temperature, it is called thermonuclear fusion. So you can write here, when fusion is achieved by raising temperature, it is called thermonuclear fusion. Why it is called thermonuclear fusion? Because I am raising temperature in order to enable two hydrogen molecules or nucleons to come so close to each other that nuclear force starts working, and once nuclear force starts working, it can overcome electrostatic repulsion between them, and once that happens, they can combine to form a new nucleus. Now we have said that okay, I need to raise the temperature of the gas. Now let us solve a question in order to understand how high that temperature is. You cannot achieve that temperature in your home. You cannot just put hydrogen gas sample on a stove and hope that there will be a nuclear fusion. That you cannot do. So let us see through a question that how high a temperature we required in order to achieve nuclear fusion. So let us try to solve a question in order to understand how high is the temperature requirement for a nuclear fusion to take place. Now here it is, find the temperature required to bring two protons close to each other at a distance of 2 Fermi meter. Now, so let us take an example here. Here it is a proton. Here it is another proton. Now initially they are at a large distance, so there is no attraction or repulsion. But as soon as they start coming close to each other, electrostatic repulsion will try to force them apart. Now what I can do here is, I can apply law of conservation of energy. So what I can do? Initial kinetic energy plus initial potential energy will be equal to final kinetic energy plus final potential energy. So as they come close to each other, kinetic energy will be converted into potential energy. Now what will happen? Initially their potential energy is 0, and let us say I supplied kinetic energy Ke to both of them, and they started moving towards each other. So what will happen? Initial kinetic energy will be 2 times Ke plus, we are assuming that initially they are at such a large distance that potential energy is 0. So plus 0 equal to final kinetic energy. When they come closest to each other, so at the closest point, their kinetic energy will become 0. So here kinetic energy is 0 plus potential energy. What will be the potential energy? Two charges are there. So potential energy can be written as K Q square divided by R, where R is the distance between them at the time of closest approach. What is the closest approach? Here 2 Fermi meter. Closest approach means how close they can come to each other before electrostatic force repels them. So this is the closest approach. So 2 times kinetic energy will be equal to K. K is what? 9 into 10 to the power 9. What is the charge on one proton? 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 whole square divided by, what is R? R is the distance. How close do we need them? 2 Fermi meter. So 2 into 10 to the power minus 15 meter. Solve this. So kinetic energy equals 9 into 10 to the power 9 multiplied by 2.56 into 10 to the power minus 38 divided by 4 into 10 to the power minus 15. And when you solve this, you will get approximately 5.76 into 10 to the power minus 14 joule. So if your two protons have come to close to each other this much at this distance, then their kinetic energy must be how much? Must be this much. Now, you have studied in your kinetic theory of gases chapter that a kinetic energy of a molecule is a direct result of its temperature. So what you can do? You can write 3 by 2 times Boltzmann constant times T. So kinetic energy of a molecule can be written as 3 by 2 times Boltzmann constant times T, where T is the absolute temperature. So here you can write this is equal to 5.76 into 10 to the power minus 14, this much. And if you solve this, you will get T to be approximately equal to 2.78 into 10 to the power 9 Kelvin. So, if you want this reaction to take place, 2 hydrogen give you 1 deuterium plus positron plus neutrino. So if you want this reaction to take place, then at least how high a temperature do you need? You need a temperature equal to 2.38 into 10 to the power 9 Kelvin. That is a very high temperature. You cannot achieve that temperature by normal means. You cannot just put your hydrogen gas sample on a stove and hope that nuclear fusion will take place. That cannot happen. So this temperature can be achieved under very sophisticated instruments. So that is why it is very difficult to achieve nuclear fusion in order to generate electricity. That is why there are no functional nuclear fusion reactors. That is why most of the nuclear reactors are based on fission reaction, because it is easier to break a heavy nucleus rather than combining two lighter nuclei to produce one heavy nucleus. That is why we cannot use nuclear fusion. So where do we observe this nuclear fusion? You all have observed. Where? In the stars, in our sun. In our sun or any star you take, what happens is there is a lot of hydrogen gas and the temperature of the star is so high, more than this value. So the temperature of the star is so high that it can force your protons to come so close to each other that nuclear force will start working, it will overcome electrostatic repulsion and your new nucleus will be formed through fusion reaction. So the temperature of our star is sufficient to support the nuclear fusion, and energy which is released through nuclear fusion in our stars, that is the energy which we receive in form of sunlight. So sunlight is nothing but energy released during the fusion reaction which is taking place at the sun. So in this way we can understand fusion and fission reaction. So in today's lecture we have seen that how we can use fission reaction to produce electricity, and why fusion reaction cannot be used, or it is very difficult to use to generate electricity. Why it is difficult? Because temperature required for fusion to take place is very high. We cannot achieve that temperature by normal means. So this was the last lecture of your nuclei topic. In these lecture we have studied nucleus in a little bit detailed. We have studied what are the components of our nucleus. We have studied the types of nucleus. We have studied how you can judge whether your nucleus is stable or not. We have studied the processes through which an relatively unstable nucleus tries to gain more stability. We have also studied in today's lecture that how we can use nuclear fission to generate electricity, and why we cannot, or it is very difficult to use nuclear fusion. So this will be the end of your nuclear physics topic. Revise your topics as best as you can and try to solve as many questions as possible.